Hi there, my name's James Nathan. I'm the MasterChef winner 2008 and I've been making a lot of sourdough recently. There's a couple of crucial steps. It can seem bewildering when you first start making sourdough because there's so much technical geekery. Actually, the more you do it, the more you see that it's actually quite accessible. And the first thing is you've got to have a starter, and there's loads of videos on the internet showing you how to make a starter. That's mine. I don't really keep that much because one of the problems is you've got to feed it every day with, I feed it sort of 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour every day. You can do that sort of once or twice a week and keep it in the fridge and it just stays sort of half alive. You just need to remember to get it out of the fridge before you want to bake, sort of the night before, and feed it. The most important steps that I've noticed in baking bread is the first thing is to make a leaven. And that's basically a super fed starter that you leave overnight. The next step is to autolaze your flour and water for your main mix. And then kneading is important, resting it, shaping it. So I'm going to just take you through those stages. And that first thing I said was to make a leaven. And a leaven is basically, like I say, a super fed starter. So I've got 120 grams of flour, 120 grams of water. You mix them together, and then I take 30 grams of my starter mix, which is about a spoonful. I know my recipe well, it's just over a spoonful. And you mix that together to form what is technically called a shaggy mass. I don't think that is the technical word, but that's what I like to call it. See, that's as simple as it. Just do that, flour, water, starter. So you've got 30 grams of starter in 120 grams of water and flour, which means the starter's got loads of energy and food to move into and to grow to, and you leave it overnight, which I've done here. And you can see that mine's just got this lovely bubble to it, which means that, you know, it's really come alive, it's been feeding all night, and now it's at optimum gas making temperature, because that's what you're doing. You're adding a starter to flour and water, kneading it, mixing it. It's making loads of gas inside that mix, which is going to be your air, which is going to then rise your bread. So that's what it's all about. And if you look at my starter as well, my leaven here, you see how it's got massive sort of gluten in it. That's also the choice of flour that I've made. I bought a really good Canadian bread flour, and it's got amazing gluten properties, really, really stretchy, which again is going to help you with the quality of your loaf. So the quality of your flour is quite important. So we've got our leaven, and now to make the main part of the bread, and what I use is 50 grams rye flour and 950 grams of white Canadian bread flour. So it doesn't take a maths genius to work out that's a kilo of flour. And then bakers always go on about hydration rates, and this is where the geekery confused me when I was starting baking. So I put 750 grams of water into that kilo of flour. So that's a 75% hydration, that's what it's called. And you mix together the flour and the water. So you take your kilo of flour, put your 750 grams of water with it, mix it together, and again, using that lovely term, a shaggy mass is what you want. I find that a very important step, that autolaze step, mixing the flour and the water for an hour before you start your kneading. So I've got my flour, my water, now I add my leaven. So we're now putting the raising agent into the main mix. These scrapers are invaluable. And now I tend to give it 10 minutes with a Kenwood mixer. So let's set that going, and we'll come back to it in 10 minutes. So here we are at the end of 10 minutes of mixing. Turn the mixer off. And you can see that the gluten in the flour has really developed. And you've got a really stretchy dough now. And I was talking about hydration rates before, and that, you know, we're using 750 mils to a kilo of flour, so it's 75% hydration. And I mean, obviously all that means is it's got a lot of water in it. And to sort of, the more you work the gluten, the more it takes the water inside itself. At the moment it's still quite sticky, so I give it an extra bit of kneading. I mean, a lot of recipes don't even bother with kneading, they just do stretch and fold, which we'll come on to in a minute, and that is super important. But I think the more you work your gluten, and the more you knead it, the better result you get, to be honest. And this is a kneading technique which I picked up from an amazing baker in Bath called Richard Burtonay. Lots of people probably heard of him, he's very famous. But he has this sort of unique bread kneading technique, which I'll just try and demonstrate. I mean, he makes it look easy. He's a big man with big hands, and I'm not quite as well endowed as him. Is that the word? Anyway, so yeah, just a bit of Burtonay technique. But what he does is he sort of slaps it down, whips it over, slaps it down, pulls it towards him, whips it over, and you get this sort of rhythm going. So you kind of stick it to the bench, and then it really does help the dough take on the water, and it goes from being a bit of a sticky mess to being a really silky, glossy dough, and that's what you want. One of the things I'll mention here is that, you know, a very important ingredient for bread is salt. And you'll notice I haven't put any salt in yet. And a good baker's sort of measure of how much salt to use is to use about a gram per 100 grams of flour. So I'm going to put about 10 grams in. But salt is obviously quite an aggressive thing, and it kills things like yeasts, you know, which is what your starter is. And you don't want to kill your yeast off, so the later you can put the salt in, I find, the better. And at the end of this, I work the salt in. Right, so that is a pretty well kneaded bit of dough there. But this is when I put my salt in. A lot of people dissolve it in water and get it in like that, but I kind of sprinkle it in. And we're going to do something called stretch and fold next. So for the next about 2 hours, every half an hour you do what's called stretch and fold. You can obviously make sure your bench is clean, but you can put it in a clean bowl, whatever you want. But I just so the camera can see it, I'm going to leave it on the bench today, and I'm going to try and get my hands clean. See you in a minute. Okay, so that's been 30 minutes, and now it's time to do the first of 4 stretch and folds. So you're going to do one every half an hour for 2 hours. And the best thing to do is get your hands wet, and then it won't stick to you so much. And we're going to do, yes, it's called a stretch and fold, and I think it's easy to see why. You stretch, see that? That's just all working the gluten. And then sort of fold it on itself, and you're just trapping air in there and sort of giving it all, like athletes talk about muscle memory, you know, and this is what the gluten's doing. You're giving it sort of stretch memory, so that when the little pockets of air expand, the gluten can expand with it. That's all that bread making is about, is that gluten development. And so you've done one at 12 o'clock, and now go to 3 o'clock, stretch them up. But you'll find on this, when you've done one stretch, the second stretch can be a bit tougher, and it's like a muscle. It sort of contracts. So if we try and do another one, it's quite you know, it's gone quite tight and tense now. It won't stretch. That first stretch, you know, it was up here. Now it won't do it. Okay, so there's been another half an hour break, and we're here for our next stretch and fold. So again, stretch and fold. What wetting your hands is like really helpful. It just stops the dough sticking to it. And you go to that 12 o'clock position, stretch it up. So here we are, 2 hours has gone past. It's the last time to do a stretch and fold. And remember to wet your hands to do this. Take it from 12 o'clock and stretch. And fold. And then sort of go to the 3 o'clock position, or rotate your bowl. Take that corner and lift it right up, let it stretch. And fold it over. And now we're waiting to basically do its main rise. So like I say, we're going to leave this for about 4 hours in a warm, dark place. Well, just a warm place. I'm going to put a tea towel over it. And then I'm going to come back, I'm going to shape it and put it in a sourdough proving basket, and then I'm going to leave it in the fridge overnight. Hi there, so the 4-hour period is over and the bread's been proving, and you can see it's really come up on the bowl here, and you can just see the activity. I mean, there's a big bubble here and here and here. You know, it's a really lively loaf going on in there. So now we've got to shape it and then put it into this basket, which is a cane basket, and they're rich like this for sourdough because it's slowly rising and you want to give it all the help you can get as it builds and grows bigger. So it's sort of like little steps for it to climb up. So that's a really useful thing. So you want to quite generously line that with a bit of rye flour or whole wheat flour or just normal flour, semolina. You can use anything that's going to stop it from sticking. You don't want it to be too aggressive with it at this stage because, you know, like I say, it's got this lovely structure inside and you don't really want to break that. I tend to basically do a bit more of a stretch and fold on it. Just the very delicate ones. You sort of pull out the 4 points of the compass, north, east, south, west. So pull it out, stretch it over and put it on top like that, and then roll it over. And then you sort of do this motion underneath it, so you're just stretching the surface over. My hands are a bit sticky. And sort of joining the bottom of it underneath. And you get a nice sort of surface tension going on. So that's going to be the top of our loaf. You want to put it into the basket, top side down, so that when you turn it out, obviously the top's on the top. And one thing that's important now, I've sort of floured the bottom of the basket, but it's also, you know, the bread's going to rise up. You want to make sure it's floured around the edge at the top here now as well. Perfect. So yeah, I'm going to pop this in the fridge, leave it overnight, and then bake it in the morning. And we'll see how we get on. Good morning, everybody. So I've had my bread in the fridge overnight. It's been in there for sort of 12 hours really, and now you can see, you know, it went in there, it was halfway up the basket. It's now pretty much filled the basket. There's bubbles everywhere. So I've got a tray in the oven. That's getting really hot. I'm going to use that just to put the tray on, turn the loaf out, score it with this, which is a special sourdough or bread scoring blade. It's basically a razor blade. Under tension, and it's supposed to slice through very easily. And the other little tip is when you put your bread in, it's quite good to use a squeezy bottle of just water and just spray a bit into the oven, very carefully obviously, because you're dealing with an extremely hot oven, so just go very steady with that if you're going to do that. But it just helps that initial burst of steam, which is really important to setting the crust on the sourdough. It's a really good way of doing that. So let's get my tray. And it's all about keeping the shape now, because the sourdough has built its own lovely little shape, and it's easy to disrupt that. You want it to just come out of the basket as gently as possible. And you can sort of feel it. If you're lifting the basket and it's got some weight behind it, it means the bread's stuck inside. That's not my best job, but you know, you can see it's a pretty loaf-like shape. And then you just want to try and score some lines in it as deep as you can, because the bread wants to expand, and if you don't cut it, it feels like you're wrecking your lovely loaf that you've created. But if the bread can't expand, you know, it can't become nice and risen and puffed up. Let's get it in the oven and give it about 40 minutes. So that's my oven timer has just gone off. I've got my loaf out, and there we go. We've got a pretty hot but pretty decent sourdough loaf. So I'll do one more shot, me cutting the bread so you can have a look at what's inside, and happy baking.